The turkey was roasted to golden perfection. Mary Brown, who was 68 years old, paused for a moment to admire her work as the cinnamon and orange scent of the Christmas punch filled the kitchen. Her hands, marked by decades of hard work, now trembled slightly as she arranged the special dinnerware on the table. It was the fine china she had inherited from her mother, and she only used it on the most important occasions. John would have been so proud, she whispered to herself, feeling that familiar emptiness in her chest whenever she thought of her husband. After 45 years of marriage, it still felt strange to spend her days without him. It had been 8 months since his massive heart attack, and the house still felt too big and too quiet. But tonight would be different. Tonight, on Christmas Eve, her son David would be coming over with his wife Sarah and her granddaughters Emily and Ashley for the first time since the funeral. The house would be filled with laughter and voices. Mary looked at the clock. It was barely 5 in the afternoon. She still had time to mentally go over all the details while she sat down to rest for a moment. Her thoughts drifted back to the early years with John when they lived in that small 2-bedroom apartment on the outskirts of Chicago. Those were the days she smiled, remembering how they used to work double shifts. She cleaned offices at night and he drove a cab during the day. She would get home at 3 in the morning with her hands cracked from the cleaning supplies, but she always found the energy to pack David's lunch and help him with his homework. Her gaze settled on the framed photograph above the fireplace. It was David, at 18 years old, smiling with his high school diploma. By that time, they had already sold the plot of land they bought to build their dream house. They had saved $50,000 over 10 years, penny by penny, sacrificing even the smallest treats. Mary unconsciously ran her tongue over the gap where several of her teeth used to be. For years, she had put off her dental treatment because she wanted David to have money for his college expenses. "Get your teeth fixed, Mary," John used to tell her. "I will find the money somewhere else." "No, my love," she always replied. "Our son comes first, then us." In the family photos from that time, she always smiled with her mouth closed, but the pride shone in her eyes when she saw her son with his new books and his spotless uniform. When David graduated from college with his engineering degree, Mary cried tears of joy at the ceremony. Every sacrifice had been worth it. Every sleepless night, every dollar they did not spend on themselves. Finally, they could live a little for themselves, or so Mary thought. That was until David met Sarah. Sarah entered their lives like a hurricane. She was beautiful without a doubt. She had perfectly styled brown hair and wore designer clothes. She was the daughter of a wealthy businessman from New York, and she was used to having everything handed to her on a silver platter. Mary would never forget the first time Sarah visited their modest home in a small town in Ohio. She remembered the way her eyes scanned every corner, lingering on the cracks in the wall and the worn-out furniture. She did not say a word, but her look said it all. "It is cozy," she finally commented with a smile that did not reach her eyes. Mary told herself that she was young and would get used to it. The important thing was that she loved her son. 3 months later, David announced their engagement. Mary and John prepared a small celebration at home with the best food they could afford. Sarah barely touched Mary's homemade stew. She just sipped a glass of wine while constantly checking her phone. A week later, Sarah showed up at the door with a folder under her arm. John had just gotten home from his taxi shift and was still wearing his uniform when Sarah spread several papers out on the kitchen table. "Mrs. Mary, Mr. John," she said with a firm voice. "I have prepared a budget for our wedding. We need $80,000 for the venue, the catering, and the music." It was not a request. It was an order. Mary and John exchanged looks of absolute shock. "David told me that you guys are going to help us out," Sarah continued as if she were talking about the weather. That night after she left, Mary and John spoke in whispers in their bedroom. "What do we do, Mary?" John asked as worry wrinkled his tired face even more. "He is our only son, John," she replied, even though her heart felt as heavy as lead. "If we do not help him, who will—" Those $80,000 were their entire retirement savings. They kept them in a bank account they never touched. It was their safety net for their old age. After a sleepless night, they emptied the account. On the day of the wedding, Sarah looked radiant in her $20,000 dress. When Mary stepped forward to hug her, Sarah backed away slightly. "Careful with the makeup, ma'am," she warned her. She never called her mom like Mary had hoped. She was always Mrs. Mary, which set a distance that would become more and more obvious over the years. When the girls were born, first Emily, and 3 years later, Ashley Mary felt her heart expand. Finally, after years of coldness from Sarah, she had a reason to feel like part of the family again. "Could you watch them while we work?" David asked one Sunday during a brief visit. "Daycare is extremely expensive, and Sarah wants to go back to her job at the real estate agency." Mary agreed without any hesitation. From Monday to Friday, from 7 in the morning until 6 in the evening, Mary was at David and Sarah's house. She changed diapers, gave bottles, played with them, bathed them, and comforted the little ones when they cried. John used to joke that Mary seemed more like the girls' mother than Sarah did. Whenever they fell or got hurt, they always yelled for Grandma instead of Mom, but they never paid her a single dime for taking care of them. They did not even give her money for the girls' food. Mary would bring her own groceries from home to make lunch for Emily and Ashley. One afternoon, while Sarah was reviewing some contracts in the dining room, Mary gathered her courage. "Sarah," she began with a soft voice, "John and I are a bit tight on money right now. His pension does not cover everything." Sarah looked up from her papers, her expression hardening. "Well, ma'am," she replied dryly, "you are the one who decides if you watch them or not. We never asked you to come over every single day." Mary was left completely speechless. Pain and anger formed a lump in her throat. But of course she kept going. How could she abandon her granddaughters? She loved them too much. She saw how they smiled when she arrived in the mornings, how they ran to hug her, and how Emily would say, "Grandma, will you read me a story?" For them, she put up with all of Sarah's disrespectful comments, David's growing indifference, and the long hours without any compensation. Deep down in her heart, Mary knew something was not right, but she preferred not to confront the situation. After all, they were family, and family is everything. At least that was what she had been taught. The day John died, a part of Mary went with him. It was a Wednesday morning. She was getting ready to go to David and Sarah's house when she heard a loud thud in the bathroom. She found John on the floor. His face was twisted in pain and one hand was clutching his chest. The ambulance arrived in 15 minutes, but it was already too late. Massive heart attack, the doctors said. He probably did not suffer much. Mary called David through her tears. He arrived at the hospital 2 hours later. He was alone without Sarah or the girls. "They had school," he explained briefly, avoiding his mother's gaze. The funeral was small. A few neighbors, 2 of John's taxi driver friends, and Mary's brother, who came all the way from Texas, attended. David was present during the service. But afterwards, while the others were offering their condolences, he approached Mary with his car keys in his hand. "Mom," he told her, "you are a grown woman now. You have to learn to fend for yourself. We cannot take care of you your whole life." Sarah did not even say goodbye. She simply packed the girls into the car and drove off, leaving Mary all alone in the cemetery. She stood there with the fresh dirt on John's grave and a very empty future ahead of her. The first few months after the funeral were the hardest of her life. The house was full of memories of John. His coffee mug was on the table, and his favorite armchair where he watched the news was empty. His side of the bed remained untouched because Mary could not bear to mess it up. She called David every single week, but he always had excuses. "I am swamped at work, Mom. The girls have after-school activities. Sarah is not feeling well." There was always something more important than his widowed mother. Whenever she suggested visiting them, Sarah would make up stories about the girls being sick or having prior commitments. Once Mary drove to their house unannounced just because she missed her granddaughters terribly. Sarah greeted her at the door, but never invited her inside. "Mrs. Mary, the girls are sleeping. Come back another day." It was 4 in the afternoon on a Saturday. The girls were not sleeping. Mary could hear their laughter coming from inside the house. On Mother's Day, she did not even receive a phone call. She sat right next to the phone all morning long, waiting for it to ring. When she finally dialed his number, David answered in a distracted tone. "Oh, Mom, I totally forgot. Happy Mother's Day. I will talk to you later." He never called her back. For her birthday in September, David showed up with a wilted bouquet of flowers that he probably bought at a traffic light. He stayed for exactly 20 minutes. Sarah did not even step out of the car. The girls gave their grandmother a quick hug. When Mary asked if they would stay for some cake, David replied quickly, "We cannot, Mom. We have a doctor's appointment." On a Saturday at 7 in the evening, Mary knew it was a lie, but she just smiled and kissed them goodbye. She swallowed her tears until the car disappeared from sight. Despite everything, Mary held onto her hope. She thought things would be completely different for Christmas. It was her first Christmas without John, and she needed her family more than ever. 2 weeks before the 24th of December, she called David with pure excitement. "Son, I want to invite you all over for Christmas Eve dinner. I'm going to prepare everything just like the old days back when you were a little boy." There was a long silence on the other end of the line. For a brief moment, Mary feared he would reject the invitation. "Yes, Mom," he finally said. "We will be there at 8, just like always." The heart in Mary's chest filled with absolute joy. Finally, they would all be together as a family again. The girls would open their presents under her Christmas tree, just like when they were younger. What Mary did not know was that David and Sarah had already made the decision to abandon her. That promise was just as empty as all the previous ones. Mary wanted this Christmas to be incredibly special. She spent her last $1,000 making sure everything was perfect. She bought an 18-pound turkey. It was the largest one she could find at the grocery store. She bought premium cured ham codfish for fritters, ingredients for the punch-expensive wine for David, and fresh juices for the girls. She also bought presents. She got a doll for Emily, a small bicycle for Ashley, an expensive dress shirt for David, and a fancy French perfume for Sarah. She thought that maybe if she showed them her generosity, they would value her presence in their lives a little more. She spent 3 whole days cooking. Her 68-year-old hands were not what they used to be. Her joints ached terribly, but she did not stop. She made creamy croquettes from scratch, preparing the sauce with endless patience. She baked homemade fudge exactly the way John used to love it. She cleaned the house until every single corner shined. She brought out the fine china that she had inherited from her mother. She ironed the lace tablecloth that they only used on very special occasions. She put on some classic Christmas music. She decorated the table with bright red candles. She arranged all the presents beautifully under the tree. She dressed up in her navy blue dress. It was the one David always said looked pretty on her. She put on some lipstick and even wore the pearl earrings that John gave her for their 20th anniversary. By 7 in the evening, she had absolutely everything ready. The dining table looked like something right out of a magazine. The turkey was perfectly golden, the side dishes were piping hot, and the cinnamon punch smelled delicious. She sat on the couch to wait. She looked out the window at every passing car, hoping to spot David's white Audi. At 8 o'clock sharp, they did not show up. There is probably a lot of traffic, she thought to herself. It is Christmas Eve. Traffic must be terrible. At 8:30, she was still waiting. She dialed David's number, but the call went straight to voicemail. By 9 o'clock, she was getting genuinely worried. Did something happen to them? Maybe they got into a car accident. Or maybe the girls got sick. At 9:30, she dialed again. This time, Sarah actually answered. Mary could hear a lot of background noise. There were people talking, laughing, and loud music playing. "Hello," Sarah answered with a very annoyed tone. "Sarah, it is Mary. Where are you guys? I am waiting for you for dinner." Mary said, trying her best to stay calm. Sarah stayed completely quiet for a few seconds. It felt like an absolute eternity. "Oh, Mrs. Mary, things got a little complicated for us," she finally replied. "We decided to go to my mother's house instead. My whole family is here, and we just could not leave them alone." Mary felt like she had just been punched hard in the stomach. "What do you mean things got complicated?" she asked with a shaky voice. "David confirmed to me just 3 days ago that you were coming. I have the entire dinner ready. I even bought presents for the girls." "Well, I do not know what to tell you, ma'am," Sarah answered with a coldness that cut like a sharp knife. "Things change. David is having a great time here with my brothers. The girls are playing with their cousins. Do not worry about it. We will visit you some other day." "Can I please speak with David?" Mary pleaded, feeling her voice tremble. "He is busy right now," Sarah replied dryly. "Too busy for his own mother on Christmas Eve," Mary exclaimed. She lost her composure for the very first time. "Ma'am, do not yell at me," Sarah responded with a harsh tone. "It is not my fault that you refuse to understand that David has his own family now. We are his priority now. Us." "And what am I to him?" Mary asked with tears filling her eyes. Sarah's answer felt exactly like a slap to the face. "You are his past, Mrs. Mary. We are his present and his future." And with that, she hung up the phone. Mary stood there with the phone in her hand. She was completely unable to believe what she had just heard. "You are his past." Those cruel words hit her harder than any physical blow ever could. She spent 42 years raising that boy. She sacrificed absolutely everything for him, only for his wife to tell her that she was nothing but his past. She walked back to the kitchen like a total zombie. The turkey was already getting cold and the juices were pooling in the roasting pan. The side dishes she had prepared with so much love looked incredibly sad on the table. The red candles had melted halfway down, and the wrapped presents under the tree seemed to be mocking her. She sat down in the dining room chair. She was completely alone, staring at all that delicious food that no one was going to eat. The silence inside the house was deafening. Outside, she could hear other families celebrating. She heard kids screaming with joy, loud music and laughter. Meanwhile, she sat there abandoned at her very own Christmas dinner table. She cried harder than she had cried since John's funeral. She cried because of the absolute humiliation and the bitter betrayal. She cried for all those years of wasted sacrifices. She wept because for the first time in her entire life, she felt entirely alone in this world. She did not even have John around to hug her and tell her that everything would be all right. But what hurt the most was not being alone. What hurt the absolute most was imagining David laughing with Sarah's family. He was probably tasting his mother-in-law's food and watching his daughters open presents bought with money that did not come from her own sacrifices. The most painful part was knowing that he had chosen another family over his own. He chose them over the woman who gave him life. At 11 o'clock at night, when she had cried until she had no more tears left, the doorbell suddenly rang. For a brief second, her heart skipped a beat. They actually came, she thought to herself, her hope quickly reigniting. They felt guilty and finally came. She rushed to open the door, smoothing down her dress and wiping away her fresh tears. But it was not David. It was a delivery courier holding a large envelope in his hand. "Mary Brown?" the courier asked, holding the envelope. "Yes, that is me," she replied, feeling very confused. "I have a special delivery for you. You need to sign right here." "Hork," he said, handing her a digital tablet to sign. Mary took the envelope with shaking hands. It was a large, heavy manila envelope. It had no return address. It only had her name and address handwritten on the front in a handwriting she did not immediately recognize. "Who sent this to me?" she asked the courier. But he had already hopped onto his motorcycle and was driving away down the street. She closed the front door and stood right there in her living room holding the mysterious package. Who would send her something like this on Christmas Eve, and why had they delivered it exactly at the moment when she was feeling the most alone? Her hands shook as she finally tore open the envelope. Inside there were documents. There were stacks of legal documents and a handwritten letter. She recognized the neat handwriting immediately. It was John's handwriting. But John had passed away 8 long months ago. How was it even possible that he was writing her a letter? Her heart started racing. She unfolded the paper and began to read it. "My dearest Mary, if you are reading this right now, it means that I am no longer with you. It also means that our son has failed you in your greatest time of need. I really hope I am wrong, but I know David and Sarah entirely too well. I have spent months watching how they treat you. I saw how they talk to you and how they take advantage of your kind heart. It breaks my soul that I cannot do anything about it from where I am right now." Fresh tears began to stream down Mary's cheeks once again. John had seen absolutely everything. He had noticed all the terrible things she never wanted to accept. "My love, during the last few years of my life, I dedicated myself to investigating and preparing something to protect you. I did not want to worry you while I was still alive, but I knew the day would eventually come when you would be all alone and completely vulnerable. That is exactly why I hired the private investigator who is delivering this letter to you right now. I instructed him to hand it over to you whenever he felt the time was right." A private investigator, John had actually hired a private detective to investigate his very own son. Mary's heart beat even faster. What in the world could he have discovered? "Inside these documents, you are going to find proof of things that will hurt you deeply, Mary, but you will also find the right tools to defend yourself. It turns out that our humble little house, the one we always thought was worth nothing, is located in an area that is now worth an absolute fortune. 2 years ago, some real estate developers came around asking about our land. They offered us $1.5 million for the entire property." Mary froze completely. Her house was worth $1.5 million, and she had no idea. "But that is not all, my love. Do you remember my brother Alex? The one who moved out west 30 years ago, and we never heard from him again. Well, it turns out he passed away last year and left us an inheritance. He left us a beautiful house in Texas that is worth $200,000. The inheritance papers arrived at our house 6 months ago, but David intercepted the mail. Those stolen papers are right inside these documents." Mary could not believe what she was reading on the page. David had intercepted legal inheritance documents for a house in Texas worth $200,000, and she never knew a thing about it. David and Sarah have been plotting to keep absolutely everything for themselves. Mary, the investigator, followed them around for months. He watched them meet with shady lawyers discussing how to declare you mentally incompetent just to take full control of your assets. They have a plan, my love. They have a wicked plan to steal everything you own. Mary's hands shook so violently that she almost dropped the heavy letter. Declare her mentally incompetent. Her own flesh and blood was actually planning that. But I also have a master plan, Mary. I have a plan to protect you and make sure they pay for all the damage they have caused you. Inside these files is the secret will I created about a year ago. In it, I leave you not only the house and Alex's inheritance, but also a hidden bank account I opened without you ever knowing. For 10 long years, I saved up cash in that account. I saved dollar by dollar just so you would have financial security after my death." A secret bank account. John had been saving money behind her back for a decade. How much money could possibly be in that account? "There are $300,000 sitting in that account, Mary. It is money I saved by driving the cab during overtime hours and taking weekend jobs that I never told you about so you would not worry. I wanted to surprise you when you turned 70 years old, but life simply had other plans." Mary quickly did the math in her head. $300,000 in cash, plus the house worth $1.5 million, plus the Texas inheritance worth $200,000. She was not the poor, abandoned widow she thought she was. She had over $2 million in total assets. But there is something far more important than the money, my love. Among these papers, you will also find secret audio recordings the detective made of David and Sarah. They are recordings where they talk about you as if you were just a burden. In them, They plan out exactly how they are going to convince a judge that you are losing your mind. They are recordings where they literally laugh at all the sacrifices you made for them. Secret recordings. The private investigator had recorded her own son talking badly about her. Her heart raced even faster. "Mary, I want you to listen to those tapes. I know they are going to hurt like 1,000 knife stabs, but you need to hear them to truly understand who you have been dealing with all these years. You need to hear how they speak about you when they think no one else is listening." With trembling hands, Mary dug through the documents until she found a small flash drive. Her television did not have a port for it, but her old desktop computer did. It was the computer John had bought 5 years ago and that they almost never used. She turned it on and plugged in the drive. There were 4 different audio files. The first one was titled Sarah House Conversation October 15th. That was barely a week after John's funeral. She clicked on the file and heard David's voice. Her son, the little boy she had raised with so much love, was speaking. "The old man is finally dead. Now we have to make our moves quickly with my mother." Then Sarah's voice responded, "You are totally right. We need to convince her to sell the house and move into a nursing home. That property must be worth an absolute fortune with all the new development happening in that neighborhood." "The problem is that my mother is extremely stubborn," David replied. "But if we pressure her psychologically, if we make her feel like she is a massive burden who cannot fend for herself, she will eventually cave. Women her age get very insecure when they become widows. I really do not care if she feels bad." Sarah answered with a coldness that froze the blood in Mary's veins. "The only important thing is that she signs those legal papers for us. With what that house is worth, we could trade in our Audi for a brand new model. We could remodel our own house and even go on an expensive vacation to Hawaii." "You are right," David told her, laughing out loud. "Besides, why does an old lady who is going to live a maximum of 10 more years need such a huge house anyway? It is much better if we take advantage of it while we are still young." Mary paused the recording because she suddenly could not breathe. An old lady who is going to live a maximum of 10 more years. That was exactly how her son spoke about her. That was how he talked about the woman who had sacrificed her entire youth to give him a decent future. But the recording kept going. "Plus, when my mother dies, the girls are going to inherit everything if we do not make our move right now. I am definitely not waiting 20 years for my daughters to grow up just so I can enjoy my own family's money." Mary double-clicked to open the second audio file. This recording was from November 20th. It was her birthday. "Seriously, you have to go see your mother," she heard Sarah ask in a very annoyed voice. "It is her birthday." "Well, let her celebrate it all by herself," David answered coldly. "I am not planning on putting up with her abandoned widow whining. Do not worry, I am just going to arrive, hand her the cheap flowers, and then we will leave. I will just tell her we have a doctor's appointment for the girls, and that is it." "And what if she insists that we stay?" Sarah asked. "Then I will just tell her the girls are sick or something like that. My mother swallows any story I feed her." "My mother swallows any story I feed her." Those exact words hurt her more than all the previous ones combined. They hurt because they were absolutely true. She had swallowed all his stories, all his lame excuses, and all his dirty lies. The third file was the most recent conversation. It was dated December 20th, just 4 days before Christmas. "I already told my mom we would go over for Christmas Eve dinner," she heard David say. "Are you seriously telling me you agreed to that?" Sarah asked, sounding furious. "You are insane. I am not spending Christmas Eve with that depressed old lady. My family already has major plans. My brothers are flying in from New York." "Relax. We are not actually going," David said smoothly. "I just told her yes so she would stop bothering me. On the 24th, we simply will not show up. We can just invent some random excuse later." "And what if she makes a huge scene?" Sarah asked. What kind of scene is she going to make? Who is she going to complain to? She does not have anyone in the world except us. David replied, chuckling softly. Exactly, Sarah answered him. She is completely alone. She can cry all she wants in her little house. Nobody is ever going to hear her. Nobody is ever going to hear her. Those wicked words echoed endlessly inside Mary's head. They were right. She was completely alone. She had no living siblings around. Her parents had passed away many years ago. Her few close friends had either died or moved away with their own families. But right then, she heard something that changed absolutely everything. In the fourth audio file, David was speaking to Sarah. The good thing is that my mom knows absolutely nothing about Uncle Alex's inheritance. The legal papers arrived directly at my office because I put my work address on all the legal paperwork right after my dad died. It is $200,000 that she might never even know exists. And the house. How much is it actually worth? Sarah asked eagerly. The appraiser told me it is worth $1.5 million minimum, David responded. With the Texas inheritance and the sale of the house, we would have almost $2 million in cash. We could buy that luxury mansion in Miami that we went to look at last month. Mary gently closed the laptop and sat in the dead silence of her living room. But it was no longer the exact same silence from before. It was no longer the silence of an abandoned and highly vulnerable old woman. It was the silence of a woman who had just discovered that she held way more power than she had ever imagined. John had seen all of this coming from a mile away. He had anticipated his own son's ultimate betrayal and had prepared the perfect weapons so she could easily defend herself. The audio recordings were just the beginning. The files contained hard proof that David had intercepted her legal mail. They proved he had committed federal mail fraud. They showed he had been plotting a mental incapacitation fraud for the very first time in 8 months. Mary smiled softly because she had just realized something incredibly important. She was not the tragic victim in this story. She was the main character, and she had absolutely everything she needed to write her own ending. The very next day, on December 25th, Mary woke up feeling like a completely different woman. She was no longer Mary, the abandoned, the helpless victim, or the poor, lonely widow. She was Mary, the master strategist. She was the smart woman who held all the winning cards in her hands and knew exactly how she was going to play them. The very first thing she did was call the phone number John had left inside the letter. It was the private detective, a man named James Parker. "Mrs. Mary," he said with a friendly voice as soon as she identified herself. "I was expecting your call. Your husband asked me to help you with absolutely anything you needed when this moment finally arrived." "I need to know everything you have on my son," Mary told him. She spoke with a firmness in her voice that she did not even know she possessed. "I want all the information and every single piece of evidence. I want to know every little detail of what they have been planning." "I have a lot of solid material, ma'am," James replied confidently. "Why do we not meet tomorrow at my office so we can review everything calmly? Your husband already paid all my professional fees completely in advance. You do not have to spend a single dime out of pocket." That exact same morning, David finally called her phone. Mary watched the phone ring on the table. She took a very deep breath and answered with a calm voice. "Mom, how are you doing? I'm so sorry about last night. Things got super complicated over at Sarah's parents' house." He told her with that terribly fake voice she could now identify perfectly. Mary knew the ugly truth. She knew they had planned to abandon her right from the very start. She knew they had laughed at her while she was crying all alone at her Christmas dinner table. However, she acted just like the old Mary. She played the naive mother who swallowed any story they fed her. "Oh, son, please do not worry about it," she told him with a sad and resigned tone. "I totally understand that Sarah and the girls are your main priority now. I am already getting quite used to being alone anyway." Her acting performance was absolutely flawless. She sounded exactly like the helpless victim they were fully expecting. "Do not say things like that, Mom. You are always going to be super important to me." David lied to her face shamelessly. "Actually, I really wanted to talk to you about something. Sarah and I have been very worried about you lately. Living all by yourself in such a big house is just not safe for a woman of your age." And there it was. It was the very first step of his devious plan. He wanted to make her feel insecure, highly vulnerable, and completely incapable of taking care of herself. "Do you really think so, son?" Mary replied, faking a lot of insecurity. "It is true that sometimes I get scared being all alone. It is really scary, especially at night. Like yesterday after you guys did not come over. I got incredibly nervous with every little noise I heard." "Exactly, Mom. That is exactly why we think you should seriously consider selling the house. You could move to a smaller, much safer place. You could get an apartment or even move into a retirement home where you would have plenty of company," David told her. He was falling perfectly into the trap she was setting up for him. "A retirement home for seniors?" Mary asked, faking total surprise. "You mean like a nursing home?" "No, Mom, not a depressing nursing home," David rushed to correct her. "I mean a beautiful assisted living community. It has fun activities and people around your own age. With the money from the sale of the house, you could easily afford a really nice one. You would even have some cash left over for your daily expenses." "But David, this old house holds so many precious memories of your father," Mary told him. She perfectly maintained her role as the highly sentimental widow. "No," he replied with barely hidden impatience. "Clinging to a house full of sad memories is not going to do you any good. Just think about it." "Yes, I suppose we could start looking at a few options," Mary said, pretending to hesitate. "Actually, I could easily help you with all the legal paperwork for the sale. You would not have to worry about a single thing," David offered. He was showing her exactly what he had planned all along. He was planning on taking total control of her assets. "You are so good to me, my son," Mary told him with a very soft voice. "Just let me think about it for a few days." "Yes, it is a massive decision. Of course, Mom, take all the time you need," he replied quickly. Then he quickly added, subtly pressuring her, "But do not take too long. The sooner you decide to sell, the better price we will be able to get." Right after hanging up the phone, Mary sat back in her armchair and smiled brightly. David had completely fallen for her acting performance. He honestly thought she was the exact same weak and easily manipulated woman from before. He had absolutely no idea that she knew every single dirty detail of his wicked plan. The following day, Mary got dressed with extra special care. She chose a discreet but highly elegant outfit. She wore a gray pantsuit with a matching jacket, a lovely silk scarf around her neck, and her beautiful pearl earrings. She wanted to look dignified. She did not want to look like the fragile old lady that David believed her to be. Detective James Parker's office was located right in downtown Chicago, inside an old but very well-maintained building. He was a man in his 50s. He had salt and pepper hair and sharp eyes that seemed to notice absolutely everything. His office was packed with metal filing cabinets and computer screens. The window blinds were half open, creating a classic noir movie atmosphere that Mary felt was quite fitting for what she was about to uncover. "Your husband was a highly intelligent man, Mrs." Mary James told her as he opened a very thick file folder with her name on it. "He knew exactly what was going to happen. He gave me very precise instructions on how to help you." He showed her all the evidence material he had gathered over the past few months. It was not just the secret audio recordings she had already listened to. He also had clear photographs of David and Sarah meeting with shady lawyers who specialized in mental incompetency declarations. He had physical copies of Uncle Alex's inheritance documents that David had illegally intercepted. He had detailed logs of phone calls between David and greedy real estate appraisers. "Just look at this," James told her, handing her a clear photograph. This is your daughter-in-law walking out of a luxury travel agency on December 15th. According to my deep investigations, she requested a price quote for a family trip to Hawaii for 4 people this coming February. It is a lavish trip that costs roughly $80,000. Mary felt like she had just been punched hard in the stomach again. $80,000. They were planning to spend almost all the cash they thought they would get from the house sale on a fancy family vacation, and they were going to do it while she was locked away in a depressing nursing home. And this right here is the absolute most important piece, James told her, handing over another official document. Your son already signed a preliminary contract with a large construction firm to sell your property. Obviously, he completely forged your signature on the dotted line. That is a very serious federal crime, Mrs. Mary. It is straight-up fraud and forgery of legal documents. Mary carefully examined the contract. She felt a strong mix of pure horror and deep anger when she saw her signature completely forged on the paper. Her very own son had actually committed fraud by faking her signature. She now had all the necessary hard evidence to throw him straight into prison if she wanted to. "What do you honestly recommend I do now?" she asked the private investigator. "Your husband left me very clear instructions regarding that exact question too," James replied with a slight smile on his face. "He told me that you were a highly intelligent woman and that you would know exactly what to do when the time arrived. But he also left me some strong suggestions just in case you ever needed them." He handed her one more letter from John. It was the very last letter. In it, John explained step by step exactly how she could use all this gathered information to fully protect herself. He explained how to make David and Sarah pay dearly for all their evil plans. Mary read the handwritten letter with warm tears welling up in her eyes. Even after he was gone, John was still taking care of her. He was still fiercely protecting her. "What hurts me the absolute most," Mary confessed while looking straight at James, "is not the money. It is the deep betrayal. It is knowing that my very own son, the boy I gave absolutely everything to, has been planning this against me for so long." "I completely understand, ma'am," James said with genuine kindness. "And you have every right in the world to feel that way. But right now you need to think with a very cool head. Your husband foresaw all of this, and he left you the perfect means to defend yourself. Now it is entirely up to you to use them." "Do you have any children, Mr. Parker?" Mary asked suddenly. "I have 2, he answered, pulling a small photo out of his leather wallet. "They are 15-year-old twin boys. They live with their mother in Florida, but I make sure to see them every single month." "And what would you do if you were in my shoes? Would you report your own son to the police?" James stayed completely silent for a long moment. He was thinking extremely carefully about his answer. "I cannot tell you what to do, Mrs. Mary. That is a deeply personal decision. But I can tell you that what your son is doing is not just highly illegal. It is incredibly cruel. And sometimes the absolute greatest lesson we can ever teach our kids is to show them that their bad actions have very real consequences." Mary nodded her head slowly. She felt a fierce determination growing deep inside her chest. "You are completely right, and I have already made my final decision. I am going to follow John's master plan." Over the next few days, Mary played the role of the helpless, vulnerable Mary that they were fully expecting. Whenever David called her on the phone, she would tell him how terrified she was of living all by herself. She told him how confused she felt having so many choices to make. Whenever he came to visit her, she pretended to be much more forgetful than usual. She acted more insecure and completely dependent on him. "Do you know what, son?" she told him one afternoon when he came to visit. "I think you are absolutely right about selling this old house. I feel so lost dealing with all these papers and heavy responsibilities. Could you please help me get everything organized?" David's eyes lit up with pure, greedy excitement. "Of course I can, Mom. I will take care of absolutely everything. You do not need to worry about a single thing. Just trust me completely," he told her. He had absolutely no idea that she was secretly recording every single word he said with the tiny device James had given her. "It is just that I do not understand any of this complicated legal stuff," Mary continued with her flawless acting performance. "Your father always handled all of that. I was just a simple housewife. Do you think I could sign a few papers so you could just manage all my legal affairs for me? I would feel so much more relaxed knowing that someone as smart as you is looking out for my best interests." "Sure thing, Mom. That is called a power of attorney. It is super common when an older person needs some extra help managing their finances. I can easily get all the legal documents prepared. All you have to do is sign them," David explained to her, falling perfectly into her clever trap. "And does that mean you could sell the house for me if it became totally necessary?" Mary asked him, faking total innocence. "Exactly, Mom. I could do all the tedious paperwork completely on your behalf." Selling the house, finding your new assisted living facility, managing the money, everything. You would not have to worry about anything ever again. He promised her, never again. Those words had a very different meaning for him than for Mary. He thought it meant that she would never again have to worry about her finances because he would be in charge of stealing everything from her. Mary knew it meant that he was never going to be able to hurt her again. "That sounds perfect to me, son. I trust you completely," Mary told him, internally savoring the irony of those words. That night, after David left, Mary called James. "He fell for the trap," she told him. "Tomorrow he is going to bring the documents so I can sign over the power of attorney for all my assets." "Perfect. Mrs. Mary, you are ready for the next phase of the plan." "More than ready," she replied with determination. "It is time for my son to learn that underestimating his mother was the worst mistake of his life." As she hung up the phone, Mary felt a pang of pain. Despite everything, he was her son, the boy she had carried in her womb, who had taken his first steps holding onto her hands, who called out to her in the middle of the night when he had nightmares. How had they reached this point? For a moment she hesitated. Was she doing the right thing? Would it not be better to forgive, to forget, to continue being the devoted mother she had always been? But then she remembered the recordings. She remembered the coldness with which David and Jessica talked about her. She remembered how they had abandoned her on Christmas Eve. She remembered the forged signature on the sales documents of her house. No, she could not let them get away with it, not just for her own sake, but also for Michael, who had worked so hard to protect her even after his death, and for her granddaughters who deserved to grow up seeing that justice existed, that you could not treat a mother, a grandmother, like that. With renewed determination, Mary went over the plan for the next day one more time. Everything had to be perfect. It was her only chance to regain control of her life and to teach David a lesson he would never forget. Mary had planned the day of the confrontation like a theatrical play. Every detail was thought out, every word rehearsed. She dressed with special care in a navy blue dress, Michael's favorite, her best pearl necklace, and she even put on a little makeup, something she had not done since the funeral. She wanted to look dignified, strong, like the woman she truly was, not like the weak old lady that David believed her to be. David arrived at her house on the 3rd of January with a folder full of documents and a fake smile that Mary could now see clearly. Jessica came with him, which surprised Mary, but it made everything even more perfect. "Mom, we brought all the papers for you to sign," David told her, unrolling them on the dining room table. "There are 3 documents. The first is the power of attorney so I can manage your finances. The second is to authorize the sale of the house. And the third is so I can make medical decisions for you if it ever becomes necessary." Medical decisions? Mary asked, feigning confusion. "Like what?" "Well, for example, if you got sick and could not decide on your treatment or if you needed special care," Jessica explained to her with that condescending voice that Mary now recognized perfectly. It is for your own good, Mrs. Mary. At your age, you never know what can happen. At her age, always, at her age, as if turning 68 had automatically rendered her incapable of thinking. I understand, Mary told them with a trembling voice. And where do I have to sign? David pointed to the lines marked with yellow sticky notes. Here, here, and here. Mom, it is very simple. Mary took the pen and pretended she was going to sign, but she stopped. Wait, she told them. Can I read the documents first? Your father always told me never to sign anything without reading it. She saw David and Jessica exchange a look of impatience. Mom, these are very technical legal documents, David told her condescendingly. You are not going to understand most of the words. Trust me, I already reviewed it with the lawyer. It is just that I am afraid to sign something I do not understand, Mary insisted, maintaining perfectly her role as a fearful old woman. Mrs. Mary, Jessica intervened with an irritated voice. We do not have all day. David had to ask for time off work to come here. If you do not trust your own son, then we do not know what else to tell you. No, I do trust him, Mary rushed to say. It is just that... Just what? David asked, starting to lose his patience. It is just that yesterday an older lady came to visit me. Mary told them, watching their faces change immediately. An older lady like me told me that she had signed some similar papers and that her son had put her in a nursing home and taken all her money. What lady? Jessica asked sharply. What was her name? I do not remember her name very well. Mary lied convincingly. But she told me to be very careful with the papers I sign, that many sons take advantage of their widowed mothers. Mom, that lady does not know what she is talking about, David told her with a tense voice. Every case is different. We would never hurt you. I know, son, I know, Mary told him. But could you explain to me exactly what is going to happen after I sign? When would you sell the house? Where would I move? How much money would I have left for my expenses? David became visibly nervous. Mom, those are a lot of questions. The important thing is that you sign now, and then we will look at the details step by step. But the thing is, I want to understand, Mary insisted. For example, if the house is worth $800,000 like you told me, and the assisted living facility costs $15,000 a month, for how many years would the money last me? $800,000, Jessica asked in surprise. Who told you the house is worth that much? David shot Jessica a deadly look. They had made their first mistake. Mary had never asked them how much the house was worth, but David had told Jessica that exact figure on the recordings. Is it not worth that? Mary asked, feigning innocence. David told me he had asked an appraiser. Yes, it is worth more or less that, David said hurriedly. But Mom, do not worry about those calculations right now. The important thing is to protect your assets by signing these documents. The thing is, I have another doubt, Mary continued. What would happen if I did not want to go to an assisted living facility? What if I wanted to stay in a normal house? Mom, they are not nursing homes, they are assisted living communities, David corrected her with barely disguised impatience. And you already said you wanted help with these decisions. You cannot be changing your mind every few minutes. I'm not changing my mind, Mary told him. I just want to understand properly. For example, could you put me in an assisted living facility, even if I did not want to after I sign these papers? Of course not. David lied to her blatantly. These papers only give me the authority to help you when you need it. It was the moment. Mary had collected enough recorded lies. It was time to show her cards. You know what, son, she told him, completely changing the tone of her voice. I think I understand perfectly now. Oh, really? David asked, relieved. So you can sign now? Yes, Mary told him, smiling. I can sign now, but not these documents. David and Jessica looked at her in confusion. What do you mean, not these documents? Jessica asked. Mary got up from the table and walked toward the bookcase where she had hidden the folder that James had prepared for her. I am going to sign these other documents," she told them, returning with the folder in her hands. "What documents are those?" David asked with a nervous voice. "These," Mary told them, opening the folder and taking out the photographs, "they are documents that prove that you forged my signature to sell my house." David turned as white as a sheet of paper. Jessica stood with her mouth wide open. "These," Mary continued, pulling out more papers, "are the recordings of your conversations where you plan to steal all my money and put me in a nursing home against my will." "Mom, what are you talking about?" David babbled. "What recordings?" Mary turned on her computer and played the first recording. His own voice filled the living room. "The old man is dead now. Now we have to make our moves quickly with my mother." David and Jessica looked at each other in terror. How did you get that?" Jessica asked with a trembling voice. "Your father," Mary said to David, "turned out to be much smarter than the two of you put together. He knew exactly what you were going to do, and he left me all the tools to defend myself." "Mom, can I explain everything to you?" David started to say desperately. "Explain what to me?" Mary asked him with a cold voice. "Explain how you plan to have me declared incompetent to steal my inheritance. Explain how you intercepted the documents of Uncle Alex's inheritance. Explain how you forged my signature to sell my house." "What inheritance from Uncle Alex?" Jessica asked, looking at David with furious eyes. "Oh, did you not tell your wife about the $150,000 you stole from my mail?" Mary asked David, enjoying every second of his terror. $150,000! Jessica screamed. "You knew about that inheritance and you did not tell me anything." "Jessica, can I explain it to you?" David started to say, but she interrupted him. "You lied to me. We've been planning this for months, and you had information that you did not give me." She screamed at him furiously. "Oh, but that is not all," Mary told them, smiling. "I also have proof that you already got a quote for a trip to Hawaii for $60,000 with the money you plan to steal from me, and proof that you already contacted construction companies to sell my property." David dropped into a chair with his head between his hands. "Mom, please, can we fix this? We never wanted to hurt you." "You never wanted to hurt me?" Mary asked incredulously. "Then what is this?" She played the recording where Jessica was saying, "I do not care if she feels bad. The important thing is that she signs the papers for us." Jessica turned red with shame and anger. "Those recordings are illegal," she screamed desperately. "No, my dear," Mary replied to her calmly. "The recordings are completely legal when they are made to protect oneself from a fraud. And it turns out that I have right here," she pulled out another document, "a temporary restraining order against the two of you signed by a judge that forbids you from approaching me or my property while the crimes you committed are investigated." "What crimes?" David asked with a broken voice. "Fraud, forgery of documents, interception of federal mail conspiracy to commit mental incapacitation, fraud, and attempted aggravated scam," Mary told them, reading from the list that the lawyer had prepared for her. "Each one of these crimes has a prison sentence." The silence that followed was deafening. David and Jessica looked at each other without knowing what to say. "But do not worry," Mary told them with a sweet smile. "I am a generous mother. I am willing to not press criminal charges if you accept my conditions." "What conditions?" David asked desperately. "First," Mary told them, raising a finger, "you are going to return all the documents of Uncle Alex's inheritance immediately. Second, you are going to sign a statement admitting that you intercepted my mail and that you forged my signature. Third, you are going to refund me all the expenses I covered for you during the last 5 years, including the free care of your daughters." "How much money is that?" Jessica asked. $400,000, Mary answered her. The detective did the calculations. Daycare, food, clothes, gifts, medical expenses, everything that a professional nanny would have charged you. "We do not have that much money," Jessica screamed. "Then," Mary told them calmly, "You can go to jail. The decision is yours." David started to cry like a little boy. "Mom, please, we are your family." "No," Mary told him with a firm voice. "My family was Michael. You are two scammers who share my last name, but that is over today." "And the girls?" David asked between tears. "Are you not going to see your granddaughters anymore?" That question hurt Mary more than she was willing to admit, but she had already made her decision. "The girls will be able to visit me when they are of legal age and can decide for themselves. Meanwhile, I do not want them to grow up near two criminals." "Mrs. Mary," Jessica said with a pleading voice, "please think about it. We made mistakes, but we can change." "The only mistake you made," Mary replied to her, "was to underestimate the woman who raised you and fed you for years. Now you have 24 hours to bring me the money and sign the documents. If not tomorrow morning, I will file all the criminal charges." David and Jessica got up trembling and walked toward the door. Before leaving, David turned towards Mary with his eyes full of tears. "Mom," he told her with a broken voice, "will you be able to forgive us someday?" Mary looked him straight in the eyes and replied to him with the same coldness with which Jessica had spoken to her on Christmas Eve. "You are my past, David. I am my present and my future." She closed the door and stayed alone in her living room. But this time, the loneliness did not hurt her. This time, the loneliness was freedom. The next day, the 5th of December, Mary woke up as a completely different woman. She was no longer Mary, the abandoned, the victim, the poor, lonely widow. She was Mary, the strategist, the woman who held all the winning cards in her hands and who knew exactly how to play them. The first thing she did was call the number that Michael had left in the letter. It was the private detective, a man named James Foster. "Mrs. Mary," he told her with a kind voice when she identified herself, "I was expecting your call. Your husband asked me to help you in whatever you needed when this moment arrived." "I need to know everything you have on my son," Mary told him with a firmness in her voice that she did not know she possessed. "All the information, all the proof. I want to know every detail of what they have been planning." "I have a lot of material, ma'am," James replied. "Why do we not see each other tomorrow in my office to review everything calmly? Your husband already paid all my fees in advance. You do not have to spend a single dollar." That same morning, David called. Mary watched the phone ring, took a deep breath, and answered with a calm voice. "Mom, how are you? I am so sorry about yesterday. Things got complicated at Jessica's parents' house," he told her with that fake voice that she could now identify perfectly. Mary knew the truth. She knew that they had planned to abandon her from the beginning. She knew that they had laughed at her while she cried alone at her Christmas table. However, she acted like the Mary of before, the naive one, the one who swallowed any story. "Oh, son, do not worry," she told him with a sad and resigned voice. "I understand that Jessica and the girls are your priority right now. I am already getting used to being alone." Her performance was perfect. She sounded exactly like the victim that they expected. "Do not say that, Mom, you are always going to be important to me." David lied to her blatantly. "In fact, I wanted to talk to you. Jessica and I are worried about you. Living alone in that big house is not safe for a woman of your age." There it was, the first step of his plan to make her feel insecure, vulnerable, incapable of taking care of herself. "Do you think so, son?" Mary replied to him, feigning insecurity. "It is true that sometimes I am afraid of being alone, especially at night. Yesterday, after you guys did not come, I got very nervous with every noise I heard." "Exactly, Mom. That is why we think you should consider selling the house and moving to a smaller, safer place, an apartment, or even an assisted living facility for seniors where you have company." David told her, falling exactly into the trap that she was setting for him. "An assisted living facility for seniors?" Mary asked, feigning surprise. "Like a nursing home?" "No, Mom, not a nursing home." David rushed to correct her. A nice community with activities with people your age, and with the money from the sale of the house, you could pay for a very good one, and you would even have money left over for your expenses. But David, this house has a lot of memories of your father, Mary told him, maintaining perfectly her role as a sentimental widow. I do not know if I could part with it just like that. Dad is no longer here, David replied with barely disguised impatience. Clinging to a house full of sad memories is not going to do you any good. Think about it. Yes, we could start looking at options, Mary said, feigning to hesitate. In fact, I could help you with all the paperwork of the sale. You would not have to worry about anything, David offered, showing exactly what he had planned to take total control of her assets. You are very good to me, son, Mary told him with a soft voice. Let me think about it for a few days. Yes, it is a very big decision, of course. Mom, take all the time you need, he replied. Then he added, pressuring her subtly, but do not take too long. The sooner you sell, the better price we can get. After hanging up, Mary stayed seated in her armchair, smiling. David had fallen completely into her performance. He thought that she was the same weak and manipulable woman of before. He had no idea that she knew every detail of his plan. The next day, Mary dressed with special care. She chose discreet but elegant clothes, a gray pants and jacket suit, a silk scarf around her neck, and her pearl earrings. She wanted to look dignified, not like the fragile old woman that David believed she was. James Foster's office was in downtown New York in an old but well-preserved building. He was a man of about 50 years old with graying hair and perceptive eyes that seemed to notice everything. His office was full of filing cabinets and computers, with the blinds half open, creating a film noir atmosphere that to Mary seemed appropriate for what she was about to discover. Your husband was a very intelligent man, Mrs. Mary, James told her while he opened a thick folder with her name. He knew exactly what was going to happen, and he gave me very precise instructions on how to help you. He showed her all the material that he had compiled for months. They were not only the recordings that she had already listened to. He had photographs of David and Jessica meeting with lawyers specializing in declarations of mental incapacity. He had copies of the documents of Uncle Alex's inheritance that David had intercepted. He had records of phone calls between David and real estate appraisers. Look at this, James told her, showing her a photograph. This is your daughter-in-law leaving a travel agency on the 15th of December. According to my investigations, she got a quote for a trip to Hawaii for 4 people in February, a trip that costs $60,000. Mary felt as if she had been punched in the stomach. $60,000! Almost all the money that they planned to get out of the sale of her house, they were going to spend on a family vacation while she would be locked up in a nursing home. And this is the most important thing, James told her, handing her another document. Your son already signed a pre-contract with a construction company to sell your property. Obviously, he forged your signature. It is a serious crime. Mrs. Mary, fraud and forgery of documents. Mary examined the document, feeling a mixture of horror and indignation upon seeing her forged signature. Her own son had committed fraud, falsifying her signature. She had all the necessary evidence to put him in jail if she wanted. What do you recommend I do? She asked the detective. Your husband left me very clear instructions about that, too, replied James with a slight smile. He told me that you were a very intelligent woman, and that you would know exactly what to do when the time came. But he also left me some suggestions in case you needed them. He handed her one more letter from Michael, the last letter. In it, Michael explained step by step how she could use all that information to protect herself and make David and Jessica pay for all their plans. Mary read the letter with tears in her eyes even after dead. Michael kept taking care of her, protecting her. What hurts me the most, confessed Mary, looking at James, is not the money. It is the betrayal. It is knowing that my own son, to whom I gave everything, has been planning this for so long. I understand, ma'am, said James with kindness, and you are in your right to feel like that, but now you need to think with a cold head. Your husband foresaw this and left you the means to defend yourself. Now it depends on you to use them." "Do you have children, Mr. Foster?" asked Mary suddenly. "Two," he replied, taking out a photo from his wallet. 15-year-old twins. They live with their mother in Chicago, but I see them every month." "And what would you do in my place? Would you report your own son?" James kept silence for a moment, thinking carefully about his answer. "I cannot tell you what to do, Mrs. Mary. That is a very personal decision, but I can tell you that what your son is doing is not only illegal, it is cruel, and sometimes the greatest lesson that we can give to our children is to teach them that actions have consequences." Mary nodded slowly, feeling how the determination grew inside her. "You are right, and I already made my decision. I am going to follow the plan." During the following days, Mary acted like the vulnerable Mary that they expected. When David called her, she told him how scared she was of living alone, how confused she felt with so many decisions to make. When he visited her, she pretended to be more forgetful than normal, more insecure, more dependent on him. "You know what, son?" she told him one afternoon that he came to visit her. "I think you are right about selling the house. I feel very lost with all these papers and responsibilities. You could help me to organize everything." The eyes of David shined with emotion. "Of course, Mom, I will take care of everything. You do not worry about anything. Just trust me." He told her without knowing that every word he said, she was recording it with the device that James had given her. "It is just that I do not understand anything about these legal things," continued Mary with her performance. "Your father always took care of all that. I was just a housewife. Do you think that I could sign some papers so that you manage my affairs? I would feel calmer, knowing that someone intelligent like you is taking care of my interests." "Sure, Mom, that is called a power of attorney. It is very common when an older person needs help with their finances. I can get the documents and you just have to sign," explained David to her, falling perfectly into the trap. "And that means that you could sell the house for me if it were necessary," asked Mary to him, feigning naivety. "Exactly, Mom. I could do all the paperwork for you. Selling the house, finding your new assisted living facility, managing the money, everything. You would not have to worry about anything ever again." He promised her never again. Those words had a very different meaning for him than for Mary. He thought that it meant that she would never again have to worry about her finances because he would take charge of stealing everything from her. Mary knew that it meant that he was never going to be able to hurt her again. "That sounds perfect to me, son. I trust you completely." Mary told him, savoring internally the irony of those words. That night after David left, Mary called James. "He already fell in the trap," she told him. "Tomorrow he is going to bring the documents so that I sign him power of attorney over all my assets. Perfect, Mrs. Mary. You are ready for the next phase of the plan." "More than ready," she responded with determination. "It is time that my son learns that underestimating his mother was the worst mistake of his life." While she hung up, Mary felt a twinge of pain. In spite of everything, he was her son, the boy that she had carried in her womb, that had taken his first steps holding onto her hands, that called her in the middle of the night when he had nightmares. How had they arrived to this point? For a moment she doubted. Was she doing the correct thing? Would it not be better to forgive, to forget, to keep being the selfless mother that she had always been? But then she remembered the recordings. She remembered the coldness with which David and Jessica spoke of her. She remembered how they had abandoned her on Christmas Eve. She remembered the falsified signature on the documents of sale of her house. No, she could not permit that they get away with theirs. Not only for her, but also for Michael, who had worked so hard to protect her even after his death. And for her granddaughters, who deserved to grow up seeing that justice existed, that you could not treat a mother like that, a grandmother with renewed determination. Mary reviewed one more time the plan for the next day. Everything had to be perfect. It was her only opportunity to recover the control of her life and to teach David a lesson that he would never forget. Mary had planned the day of the confrontation like a play of theater. Every detail was thought out, every word rehearsed. She dressed with special care a navy blue dress, the favorite of Michael, her best necklace of pearls. And she even put on a little of makeup, something that she did not do since the funeral. She wanted to look dignified, strong, like the woman that she really was, not like the weak old lady that David believed that she was. David arrived to her house the 3rd of January with a folder full of documents and a false smile that now Mary could see clearly. Jessica came with him, thing that surprised Mary, but that made everything even more perfect. "Mom, we brought all the papers so that you sign them," told her David, unrolling them over the table of the dining room. "They are 3 documents. The first is the power of attorney so that I can manage your finances. The second is to authorize the sale of the house. And the third is so that I can take medical decisions for you if it got to be necessary." "Medical decisions?" asked Mary, feigning confusion. "Like which ones?" "Well, for example, if you got sick and you could not decide about your treatment, or if you needed special care," explained Jessica to her with that condescending voice that Mary now recognized perfectly. "It is for your own good, Mrs. Mary. At your age, one never knows what can happen." At her age, always at her age, as if the 68 years had returned her automatically incapable of thinking. "I understand," told them Mary with a trembling voice. "And where do I have to sign?" David pointed her the lines marked with yellow sticky notes. "Here, here, and here, Mom. It is very simple." Mary took the pen and feigned that she was going to sign, but she stopped. "Wait," she told them. "Can I read the documents first? Your father always told me to never sign anything without reading it." She saw how David and Jessica interchanged a look of impatience. "Mom, they are very technical legal documents," told her David with condescension. "You are not going to understand the majority of the words. Trust me. I already reviewed it with the lawyer. It is just that it gives me fear to sign something that I do not understand," insisted Mary, maintaining perfectly her role of fearful old lady. "Mrs. Mary," intervened Jessica with irritated voice, "we do not have all the day. David had to ask for permission at the work to come here. If you do not trust your own son, then we do not know what else to tell you." No, I do trust him," hurried to say Mary. "It is just that, just that." "That what?" asked David, starting to lose the patience. "It is just that yesterday an older lady came to visit me," told them Mary, seeing how their faces changed immediately. "An older lady like me told me that she had signed some similar papers and that her son had put her in a nursing home and had taken all her money from her." "What lady?" asked Jessica sharply. "What was her name?" "I do not remember well her name," lied Mary convincingly. "But she told me that I had a lot of care with the papers that I signed, that many sons take advantage of the widowed mothers." "Mom, that lady does not know what she speaks of," told her David with a tense voice. "Every case is different. We would never do you harm." "I know it, son. I know it," told him Mary. "But could you explain me exactly what is going to happen after I sign? When would you sell the house? To where would I move? How much money would stay for me for my expenses?" David put himself visibly nervous. "Mom, those are a lot of questions. The important thing is that you sign now and after we go seeing the details, step by step." "But is that I want to understand?" insisted Mary. "For example, if the house is worth $800,000 like you told me, and the assisted living facility costs $15,000 to the month, for how many years would the money reach me?" $800,000? asked Jessica, surprised. "Who told you that the house is worth so much?" David threw her a murderous look to Jessica. They had committed their first mistake. Mary had never asked them how much the house was worth, but David had told Jessica that exact figure in the recordings. "Is it not worth that asked Mary, feigning innocence. David told me that he had asked with an appraiser. Yes, more or less that it is worth, said David hurriedly. But Mom, do not worry for those calculations right now. The important thing is to protect your patrimony signing these documents. Is that I have another doubt, continued Mary. What would happen if I did not want to go to an assisted living facility if I wanted to stay in a normal house? Mom, they are not nursing homes. They are assisted living communities, corrected her David with barely dissimulated impatience. And you already said that you wanted help with these decisions. You cannot be changing of opinion every few minutes. I am not changing of opinion, told him Mary. I only want to understand well. For example, could you put me in an assisted living facility, although I did not want to, after I sign these papers? Of course not, lied to her David, blatantly. These papers only give me authority to help you when you need it. It was the moment Mary had achieved enough recorded lies, it was time to show her cards. You know what, son, she told him, changing completely the tone of her voice. I think that I already understood perfectly. Ah, yes, asked David, relieved. Then you can sign now. Yes, told him Mary, smiling. I can already sign it, but not these documents. David and Jessica looked at her confused. How that not these documents? Asked Jessica. Mary got up from the table and walked towards the bookcase where she had hidden the folder that James had prepared her. I am going to sign these other documents, told them, returning with the folder in the hands. What documents are those? Asked David with nervous voice. These, told them Mary, opening the folder and taking out the photographs. They are documents that prove that you falsified my signature to sell my house. David turned white as the paper. Jessica stayed with the mouth wide open. These, continued Mary, taking out more papers, are the recordings of your conversations where you plan to steal all my money and put me in a nursing home against my will. Mom, of what are you speaking? Babbled David. What recordings? Mary turned on her computer and put the first recording. His own voice filled the living room. The old man already died. Now we have to move pieces fast with my mother. David and Jessica looked at each other, terrified. How did you get that? Asked Jessica with trembling voice. Your father, told Mary to David, turned out to be a lot more intelligent than you two together. He knew exactly what you were going to do, and he left me all the tools to defend myself. Mom, can I explain you everything? Started to say David desperately. Explain me what? Asked him Mary with cold voice. Explain me how you plan to declare me incapacitated to steal my inheritance. Explain me how you intercepted the documents of the inheritance of Uncle Alex. Explain me how you falsified my signature to sell my house. What inheritance of Uncle Alex? Asked Jessica, looking at David with eyes of fury. Did you not tell your wife about the $150,000 that you stole from my correspondence? Asked Mary to David, enjoying every second of his terror. $150,000! Screamed Jessica. You knew of that inheritance and you did not tell me anything. Jessica, can I explain it to you? Started to say David, but she interrupted him. Did you lie to me? We have been months planning this, and you had information that you did not give me, she screamed to him, furious. But that is not all, told them Mary, smiling. I also have proofs that you already quoted a trip to Hawaii of $60,000 with the money that you thought to steal from me, and proofs that you already contacted with construction companies to sell my property. David let himself fall in a chair with the head between the hands. Mom, please, can we fix this? We never wanted to hurt you. You never wanted to hurt me, asked Mary, incredulous. Then what is this? She put the recording where Jessica was saying, to me it gives me equal if she feels bad. The important thing is that she signs us the papers. Jessica turned red of shame and rage. Those recordings are illegal, she screamed, desperate. No, my dear, answered her Mary calmly. The recordings are completely legal when they are made to protect oneself from a fraud, and it turns out that I have here. She took out another document. a temporary order of distancing against you two, signed by a judge that prohibits you from approaching to me or to my property, while the crimes that you committed are investigated." "What crimes?" asked David with broken voice. "Fraud, falsification of documents, interception of federal correspondence, conspiracy to commit fraud of mental incapacitation, an attempt of aggravated scam," told them Mary, reading from the list that the lawyer had prepared her. "Each one of these crimes has a penalty of jail." The silence that followed was deafening. David and Jessica looked at each other without knowing what to say. "But do not worry," told them Mary with sweet smile. "I am a generous mother. I am disposed to not present penal charges if you accept my conditions." "What conditions?" asked David desperately. "First," told them Mary, raising a finger, "you are going to return all the documents of the inheritance of Uncle Alex immediately. Second, you are going to sign a declaration admitting that you intercepted my correspondence and that you falsified my signature. Third, you are going to return me all the expenses that I made for you during the last 5 years, including the free care of your daughters." "How much money is that?" asked Jessica. $400,000, answered her Mary. The detective made the calculations: daycare, feeding, clothes, gifts, medical expenses, everything that a professional nanny would have charged you. "We do not have so much money," screamed Jessica. Then told them Mary with calm, "You can go to the jail. The decision is yours." David started to cry like a small boy. "Mom, please, we are your family." "No," told him Mary with firm voice. "My family was Michael. You are 2 scammers that share my last name, but that finished today." "And the girls?" asked David between tears. "Are you not going to see more your granddaughters?" That question hurt Mary more than what she was disposed to admit, but she already had taken her decision. "The girls will be able to visit me when they are of age and can decide for themselves. Meanwhile, I do not want that they grow near of 2 criminals." "Mrs. Mary," said Jessica with supplicating voice, "please think it. We committed mistakes, but we can change." "The only mistake that you committed," answered her Mary, "was to underestimate the woman that raised you and fed you for years. Now you have 24 hours to bring me the money and sign the documents. If not tomorrow same, I present all the penal charges." David and Jessica got up trembling and walked towards the door before leaving. David turned towards Mary with the eyes full of tears. "Mom," he told her with broken voice, "will you be able to forgive us someday?" Mary looked at him direct to the eyes and answered him with the same coldness with the which Jessica had spoken to her in Christmas Eve. "You are my past, David. I am my present and my future." She closed the door and stayed alone in her living room, but this time the loneliness did not hurt her. This time the loneliness was freedom.